to take the inaugural Elite League title. And you mentioned that it was a poor home form from the Devils. They don't get their first home win until the 27th of October, when it is poor old Bracknell again, who are on the end of a loss, a 6-4 win, which actually kicks off a run for the Devils of around 9 games without losing, only 1 draw.
There was a catalyst, guys. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know whether it was directly related. Obviously, he's a great player, but we re-signed Stevie Lyle. Stevie had gone out to try in the NHL camps and got picked up. I think we took Detroit Whalers, wasn't it?
So that was, I think, the year after he played in the OHL.
But he'd still gone back out there.
This year, I think he'd gone to some kind of maybe a junior camp, and we had signed Frank Caprice, ex-NHL goalie, Vancouver Canucks. So we had, and he was sort of in his latter years. Yeah. But we'd signed him, who were like, wow, you know.
And Woody was backing up.
And Woody was backing up. Now Woody was the ex-GB #1 goalie. You know, he'd won championship upon championship with us. So we had him as a backup. We had Frank Caprice #1. Stevie came back from a training camp, so he came in, and I think he ends up taking over from.
He did, because I remember, you know, when Stevie left again the next year, and we brought in Derek Holofsky, but Holofsky was initially the backup. I remember Caprice being fantastic the second year of Super League, but I'm not sure why. But Caprice initially struggled.
Did he have a knee injury?
Groin injury.
Yeah.
And the other thing I always remember about this year, so when, you know, you've got this ex-NHL goalie who's legit, and, you know, he was a fantastic goalie. I also remember, if it went to a shootout, we would pull Caprice and we'd put Stevie in the shootout. Because Stevie was lightning quick when he was a youngster. And really good in the shootout. And I always felt that must be the biggest kick in the nuts if you're a goalie and you're getting pulled for the shootout.
For a guy who was probably still only 17, 18 at the time.
He was young. But I remember that was that tactic. Every shootout we went into, out would come Frank and in would go Stevie.
But yeah, Stevie took the #1, and it was around that time we started going on around, and Stevie ends up winning the first ever Super League Player of the Year. Yeah. So
I mean, there was a couple of changes in sort of personnel.
Yes, there was.
I mean, I remember in that training camp in Brest, I remember finding myself on a line with Randy Smith, and I'm like, oh, and I may have misinterpreted it that he was trying me out for a spot there, see if I could cope. He was probably just ticking over time.
Not at all.
While he brought in, you know, his other players, but then that's when we bring in Uchuk and stuff like that. So we brought in these extra guys, like you said. Some of the other ones come late. Frank Evans, Brent Pope was a pickup after training camp in October or whatever.
You said his name there without kind of cursing.
I cursed inside. And then I was trying to be the bigger person.
I just went low.
And then there's the big change, isn't there, with Zeesh?
Yeah, Zeesh
going,
Thornton.
and then we pick up a guy called Steve Thornton. And I remember, again, like I say, I don't genuinely have a great memory of like hockey in general, apart from when I'm with you, JD. It rubs off for like about 2 hours on
Osmosis,
a Tuesday. But I remember we signed this guy. Remember, this is all before Elite Prospects and Hockey DB and all that. So when you signed the guy, you didn't know him from Adam, you know. And Steve Thornton comes in, and he's quite a small guy and got the smallest stick in the world. Yeah. And he goes out on our training session before a game, and I'm like, oh my God, who is that? He looked terrible. He looked absolutely awful. Like, he couldn't stick handle a puck, but he kind of regained control of it, but he was losing the puck every time he handled it, or so I thought. And okay, the puck went in the net then, but that's a terrible shot. You know, he's going to be an absolute disaster here. And then we got into the first game, and I think he got like a load of goals on that. And every time I thought he was mishandling the puck, it was actually his style, and he had like unbelievable control of the puck. And that little flipper shot, it was deadly, you know. And it was, you know, he was like an awkward-looking player, but it was just his style, and he was so effective.
He was a good winger. I think he was an even better centre when he moved there later in Super League. But his first, remember, Stefan Ziyech had just started scoring goals at this point, and he was a bit of a trier, and everyone was going behind him. And I remember Thornton's first game wasn't a league game; it was I think it might have been a Friday night friendly against Manitoba Moose. So call it
Manitoba Bison.
Manitoba Bison.
Were they Bisons as well? Were they plural?
They were.
Has anyone told them?
We will, as soon as they stop rolling on this episode. I mean, just before you... sorry.
Before we destroy Manitoba Bisons.
Yeah.
I would say that the catalyst for change may have been the fact that before this challenge game, there's only 1 win in 5.
Yes.
So there's a run of 9 games with only 1 draw.
But that was against Sheffield? Or was it a 4-4 draw against Sheffield?
It's a 4-3 win.
4-3 win against Sheffield.
It's a 4-4 draw against the Bison and 3 losses before that against Bracknell, Ayr and Newcastle.
Being highly stressed. You could see the pressure he was under. And there was a time, like he uses a scary man, especially when he loses his rag. And there was a time, I think it was during this run, and I can picture it now, that he's come down the dressing room, like we've had a bad period, and he's come down the dressing room and he's yelled and screamed and he's booted the bin, which he did have a propensity to like kick something, punch something, and he's booted the bin and the plastic in the bin is broken and his foot's gone through the bin and his foot is now wedged on there because the broken plastic is digging into his foot. So he's trying to shake this bin off his foot. He's yelling at us and he's got this bin stuck to his leg and he's hopping around trying to yell and pull this bin off. And it was like the funniest thing that we could never laugh at because if you did laugh, I think you'd be dead. And there would be no podcast.
There would be no podcast.
Yeah.
So, as you said, Johnny makes his debut in the challenge.
Yeah, and he wasn't great. He wasn't great. And what I was going to say is this is the time where Stefan Ziyech was an okay hockey player, but was kind of seen as this project, and people were starting to warm to how hard he tried. And I think he scored a goal in that win against Sheffield, might have even been the winning goal, the 4-3 game. And all of a sudden he's released, and Thornton comes in. I remember in his first game, he looked a little rusty and had that style that Franny's talking about, maybe a little bit of an awkward style, and it was, oh, what have we done here, and who's this guy? And then he just, he lights the league up.
Well, the Devils go on an 8-game winning streak from the time that he arrives there from that challenge game, so that really pushes the title charge going forward. That streak is snapped though by the Steelers on the 18th of January, a 7-6 loss.
This was the game. Remember, I told you we went 6-1 down, and then came back, and Rob Wilson said that Cardiff had all the momentum from the game, and I think if you check, like the week later, we beat Sheffield.
A couple of weeks later, there's a 3-2 win after demolishing Nottingham Panthers 11-2 and drawing in Basingstoke 4-all.
Okay.
So
you need to get out more, John.
That's what my wife says. That's why she sent me here tonight. There's your wife joke. There's your wife joke.
How long have we been recording?
Yeah.
That story is available in more depth in the archives for the Sheffield Steelers episode.
Indeed.
I believe, but there are many other fine episodes available on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
And only a couple of dodgy ones as well.
There's a couple of stingers, but
But we didn't get sued after the last episode, so there's a couple of bits of controversy.
Yeah. Mike Denton has got a hit out on you, though.
It wasn't me, was it? It was Gaza that said, if you get a criminal sentence, I think you're pretty much guilty.
Well, let's not bring it up again.
Just to give the lawyers a second bite at it.
But, I stand by it. If you're convicted of something, I can say that you are an attempted murderer. Talking about that Manitoba game, there's also a really random challenge game during the run-in to the inaugural league season with only about a handful of games left. All of a sudden, on the 5th of February, the Devils are playing the Japanese national team.
Oh, God, yeah.
Where on earth did that game come from, and who thought that was a good idea?
I haven't got a clue, but I remember they had a guy who was about 5'2" in height and 5'2" wide. Like we used to call him the Cannonball, and he would go out there. And I also remember that. So they probably played like my line a lot in that game because they were trying to rest up the guys. And I remember Peter Smith, Waffy, absolutely destroying the Cannonball with the dirtiest hit from behind. This guy was running round making his hits, and I think that's what he did, the Cannonball. And then Waffy just ploughed into him right through the numbers and might have ended that guy's night. Maybe his career, I don't know. But that's what, weird choice of time. I was probably happy about it because I got some ice time.
5th of Feb, that must be Olympic qualifying time,
possibly.
maybe. So for Japan, it makes sense.
I remember being at the game. I can't remember why on earth we played it.
Pay for One Punch's airfare from earlier in the season, the training camp. That's still trying to get the money back.
I think we need to get Finney on finding the game sheet for that game so we can find out who Cannonball is.
Yeah.
It's got to be
elite prospects.
Did we draw something like 3-3 or something?
No. Do you want another goal? Because I know you'll...
No, go on, tell me.
It's a 5-3 loss.
5-3 loss. Okay.
And reigned victorious.
Cannonball had probably all 3.
So Waffy killed him.
But yeah, it really... when I was doing my research for this episode, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. I was like, Nottingham, Bracknell, Japan...
There was a Nottingham game around that time, and I remember watching this on Sky, and Franny would have played in this. That was really... We had some injuries, and we lost in Nottingham. But it was a game where we went 1-0 up, and then Paul Adey equalised. And it was something like it's 1,000th point or 1,000th goal or so. And the game was held up for about 10 minutes while they presented him with a silver stick or something on the ice. And we just lost all our momentum. I think we lost something like 7-4 in the end. Or
it's a 5-2 loss.
5-2 loss. So
mere 3 days after the Japan debacle.
Perhaps.
We're still licking our wounds from the Cannonball.
Congratulations to Paul Adey, but that always annoyed me.
We'll bring it up next time he's down.
Yeah.
But that is only one loss.
They're the 2-3-2s against Sheffield, which are really pivotal games, which we talked about before.
And they take place on the 26th of January.
Yeah.
And the second one, I think it's before that actually. The 26th of Jan was the second 3-2 victory. Yes, 9th of Jan and the 26th of Jan, both 3-2 victories.
And then one other game reference, because it just stands out. I think we were ahead at this point, and Sheffield were a few points behind. But you could drop points against anyone, and we went to the Centrum and played. And I think Sheffield were hoping it was one of the games where Sheffield thought we might drop points because Ayr were in a really good run at this stage. And we went there, and again it was in a Sky game, and I remember watching it with my dad in Gretzky's because, just as an aside, my mother, loveliest woman in the world, was one of these women in the 90s, didn't want a satellite dish on her house because she thought it upset the aesthetics of the house. So I missed out on Premier League football. So for the ice hockey, we had to go to Gretzky's bar.
Wasn't cable an option?
No, cable wasn't an option there.
No.
So my mother...
I thought my house had cable for a time.
No, not in 96, 97. So no, we wouldn't have a dish on the house. So,
they were cumbersome, John. Cut us some slack.
I know.
This is the old analogue dishes.
It affected the property value and all that.
Younger viewers wouldn't remember the big old
They were big
analog
old
dishes.
things. They were big old things. So
Amstrads.
We were in Gretzky's, and this game, I can't remember whether we won 5-4 or something like that, but Doug McEwen, who always scored fantastic goals before this season for the Devils, but maybe in Super League and him getting older, he hadn't scored one of those Rocky Saganuk type goals where he beats the guy twice around the net. This was a game where Dougie scored such a beautiful goal, and I think he undresses Scott Young and goes in and scores, and we win this game in Ayr. And for me, and I remember being in Gretzky's that night and with my dad, I think that was the night I first thought, we're going to win this thing.
Well, it was on the 15th of February, and it was 4-3 victory, so you were very close with your 5-4. And the following day, there's a 7-4 win in Newcastle, which I remember me and my brother studiously following on teletext. And just refreshing because those two games were a precursor to the game against Manchester
on Thursday night,
which was the game where
you were there. Do you remember any of this? Because you were very quiet at the moment.
No, I was too busy looking at Cannonball. I think
that's why I was leaving it be, because I really want to find out.
I think it's
Cannonball is.
Tutsumi Otomo.
Really?
Yeah, it was down as 5'7", 176. I'm calling bullshit on that.
Right, let's have a look here in
Friend of the show.
Yeah, I mean, spent all of his career in Japan.
Yeah.
And unsurprisingly, I suppose. But the 96, 97, they did go to the World Championship, so maybe that's what they were.
I think that rings a bell that they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to winning.
Did you hear any of that the last 5 minutes?
Not really. No.
I think it was worth it because Cannonball's my new favourite player.
Yeah.
And, well, he didn't play much after 2002, so...
Waffy did have a long-lasting effect. Yeah.
I just love the list now that we're building up of related people to this show who are so left field. You know, Ken Priestley scouting players for us, and
One Punch,
and Steve-O,
John Landry's orthodontist,
John Landry, your hatred for Dan Tessier and Tyler Mosenko.
Oh, I wish people could have seen your face then. So yes, as we were saying, there was those 2-3-2 victories against Sheffield, and then in games where the Devils are inching ever closer to the line, they squeak out a win in a 4-3. The next night, go to Newcastle, win 7-4, and that sets up a game at the Welsh National Ice Rink.
Before we do this big one, can I tell one more story? And this isn't a funny story, but just I've got to get this in because I've been bitter about it for many, many years.
Is it to do with Brabant?
It's not to do with Brabant, no.
Okay.
But I've probably got another Brabant story. No, this was the year the Devils celebrated their 10th anniversary, and we celebrated it earlier in the season. I think whatever the 10th anniversary of the Ashfield Islanders game was against Ayr. Ayr have come up a lot in this podcast, and I thought it was going to be like the best night ever, apart from being with a woman. There was all the other parts of it that were fantastic. I was only 14, 15 at the time. I was a late starter. And there was Gretzky's upstairs, but there was a bar downstairs where Skate Hire normally was, and it was the first
library bar or something.
The library bar or something like that. And it was the first time I'd ever had a beer with my dad. I was 14, 15 years old. It was the 10th anniversary of the team I loved, and my dad said, "Go on, have a beer with me." And we had a couple of bottles of Budweiser, and you're having a beer with your dad.
Budweiser, it would have been Labatt's.
Or Labatt's or Moosehead or something.
Or Moosehead.
Moosehead. Maybe Labatt's.
Maybe even Budweiser Budvar. I'll give you that.
I'm sure it's Budweiser.
Budweiser, not the original. Budweiser Budvar.
Okay.
Anyway.
So I'm having this beer with my dad, and it's a big moment, lovely. You have the first drink with your father, who buys it for you, underage, but good on him. And you're about to watch your club play their 10th, and there was this whole big party planned. There was balloons above the rink. There was going to be a cake coming onto the ice, and there's those clips of the late great Heather Prue bringing that cake out afterwards. And the Devils lost. It was fantastic. The Devils lost. And my dad, who's not the best loser in the world, it was 10 years of the Devils. We've won league championships. It's been the real, as you can tell from this podcast, the only thing that's kept this sad ginger bloke going in his early years. He wanted to celebrate 10 years for his club. My dad, as soon as the buzzer went, I think we lost 3-1 or something. Right, we're going. And just
he's not tonsils that ripped off his shirt. So, yeah,
he's not, but he's very similar in that manner. So that night, first beer with my dad, but didn't get to see the 10-year celebrations because he was really unhappy we lost to Ayr.
So there was a moment at the beginning of that story where the tables just totally turned, and the man who was coached and played for the Devils for nigh on 30 years knew exactly what was in the bar. And the fan who was in said bar knew everything about what was going on in the house. I don't know what that says, but I just thought it was a lovely moment.
I didn't even know we lost.
It was a good beer, though.
So yes, we get to the chance for the Devils to seal the championship against the Manchester Storm, against John Lawless, who had been the focal point of so much of the other successes that the club had. Franny, what was Lawless's demeanour like on a night like this? Because it's got to be a part of him that's delighted to see it happen, but there's got to be a part of him that's really disappointed as well. Did he have much interaction before or after the game, or what was he like on this night?
I think when you play against your old club, especially if you're someone that's really well established, I think it always raises your game. I mean, we saw it the early years of the takeover with Todd in the Belfast game. He wanted to beat Belfast more than anybody, even though that was a huge part of his his past. You know, he's moved on, and you almost want to get one over on your old club. So there's definitely that, and I'm sure he would have loved to have spoilt the party just to, you know, even if we'd have gone on and won the league, and he'd probably been more than happy that we've done that. I'm sure he'd have just like one last laugh. But you know, we won the league, and I'm sure that he was happy about it. And you know, a very sporting guy, hugely competitive, but you know, they weren't going to win it. He knew they weren't going to win it. So you know, when all said and done, you know, very gracious.
It was a nervous night. It was a Thursday night, and it was Corpus Christi alumni. I was in Corpus Christi at the time, and it was half term, so I don't know why I remember that, but and the night before I'd watched Fierce Creatures, the sequel to A Fish Called Wanda. Not as good. I don't know why I remember that either, but I thought
Did anyone remember watching that?
Yeah. That's the first time I knew Fierce Creatures existed.
Do you know I've not seen Fierce Creatures with the nature zoo and it's worth a watch. So it's a Thursday night against Manchester, and I think the anticipation is we're going to win it, but there are some nerves there because we'd fallen short for a couple of years, and Sheffield were the dominant force, and it was a nervy game. And I remember us going a few goals up, and then Manchester coming back at us, and it wasn't until sort of the midway point of the third period where I think either Thornton assisted Machulik, or I think it might be Machulik assisted Thornton, and Thornton scored this goal on a one-timer underneath the netminder, and I think it might have given us a 2-goal spread, and then you could kind of breathe. And it was weird having Lawless in the building. It almost felt a bit disloyal winning this first league championship without him there. As a fan, you know, for the players, obviously it's a culmination of a hard year's work. As a fan, it was weird having him in the building. I think I probably would have preferred it being somebody else. And then, similar to an issue we had when we won the league for the first time after 20 years, there was no trophy there that night. So it was great, and it was good celebrations, but there wasn't any trophy presentation. That came on the Sunday or Saturday, I think, against Newcastle when we lost, because I think the guys were still hungover. It'd been sort of 2 days of drinking.
That night after Manchester?
Well, we went through the Budvar, the Labatt. No, I don't remember the game one bit. Probably didn't get on if we're going for a league championship. Probably didn't get on, but I remember almost every second from after. I remember celebrating on the ice. I remember going into the dressing room. Doug McCarthy had cigars ready.
Yeah.
So I know there's like really good pictures of him with cigars, but yeah, us like coughing our guts up, but having a chug on these cigars. I also remember one thing that I thought was one of the classiest moves that I've been involved with is that we're all going wild in the dressing room, as you can imagine. Such a buzz, the very first Super League champion. So no matter who wins it after, no one can ever be the first winners of the Super League champions apart from us. And we're all going nuts, and McCarthy stands up and he bangs something and he goes, "Right, I want to do a toast." And we're like, "Okay, yeah, we're going to do a toast." We think he's going to toast. And he said, "I want to do a toast to these guys because they didn't get the most ice time, but whenever they got out there, they did a job, and without having these kind of role players, you don't go on to win leagues." And he toasted to the likes of myself, James Manson, Waffy, George Swan. And he made that the very first toast. So not the guys like Vez who'd finished top scorer, Vez himself, McCarthy and Ivan. It wasn't, and that's who I thought he was going to toast, something like that, or Heaves. It was to give us some recognition for the part that we played, classy. And I thought that was a really, really classy thing to do. And that's my lasting memory of that night is chugging on cigars. but having McCarthy do that, it's kind of classic.
Would your dad have been around? Would he have been around the locker room? Would you have partied with your dad that night?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in the locker room. Obviously, you saw him in the bar after. I also remember Bob Phillips, who was one of the co-owners at the time. He was the minority shareholder behind Paul Guy and David Temmie. Yeah. Him running in, and when people like win stuff and you spray champagne. he's running trying to get involved with it, and the first bottle he's grabbed is a bottle of like toilet cleaner or bleach or something, and he shook it up and he's spraying it all over us. We're like, what the?
Devil's blinded. Yeah. It's entitled celebration.
Yeah, and legitimately he was like squirting this bleach at us. So yeah, and then we ended up back in, was it Winston's or Reds?
Yeah, Winston's.
In those days. And yeah, drank through the night, and hence the loss on the
Saturday night. This was a big achievement. Just a bit of a shout out for Paul Heavey. Only his second year as coach, and again, might have been great for him to win it against Lawless, kind of his mentor, the guy. But for Heavey, who we talked about before, not only his second year as coach, but also coaching players who he knew were of better quality than him, but managed to build up that level of respect, and did his due diligence and did the video and just worked harder than everybody else. That was a huge moment for Paul Heavey, and one that he should be very, very proud of.
Yeah, and I said before, like, he to me was the first of the new age of coaches that were, almost looked at the manuals, where before Lawless was very loose. Let's go out and have a scrimmage. Let's, play for beers, that kind of mentality. Let's have the best team, and I'm just going to keep them happy and keep them ticking over, have a loose structure to play. He was very structured. He worked so hard in terms of educating himself in the game. I mean, he was a physical player rather than a skilled player who would have all this kind of understanding of the game, but he wanted to make sure that he had the leadership skills. We knew that from him being captain. He wanted to take himself on to the next level as a coach, and he was the first one that kind of had systems and had prescribed plays and all stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was a fabulous night. It was my first full season as a Devils fan. It was a good one. My brother took me down whenever he could. We didn't have a season ticket, but I had my Mike Way shirt, and I had for my birthday. Yeah, I was happy with that, and I just remember just being given a load of party poppers and streamers that game before it even faced off. Yeah. I don't think that would happen now. No, I think it's a bit more of a.
I don't think Andrew Lord would have felt that, would he?
But I remember specifically that there was very much no sort of doubt around.
I was given a party popper. You're right.
Yeah, and it was.
How many games did we have to go, by the way, before we
Just two.
It was just that, and then Newcastle.
They were the last two.
Yeah. And Sheffield had that Manchester game on the Sunday, which was the 17,000 game.
Okay.
So if we'd have lost both games, Sheffield could have won the league still.
But they didn't.
They didn't.
And it was the debut of Monty.
Yes.
As a league championship. Kind of by mistake, I understand. I don't think that.
This is the story that Todd tells us, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the Monteith Bowl because the Monteith Bowl is essentially a Victorian punch bowl.
Yes.
So it's not a trophy of any description.
Or normally it's named after somebody, isn't it?
Yeah. But this is the style of bowl that it is.
It's like the name in the catalogue. It's the Monteith.
Yeah. So he's basically gone into a sort of a trophy shop and. Well, maybe not a silversmiths, maybe.
Yeah. Well, Monty is actually. I remember. I don't know why these no important stuff sticks in my head, but stupid stuff like this. The Monteith Bowl, I'm sure at the time cost upwards of £20,000, maybe, and it's
the antique solid, from the Victorian era.
It's solid silver, as opposed to the kind of silver plated that you might get today or worse. But it's legit trophy. I mean, this is. This is the start of what they thought was going to be the boom era of hockey with all the millions coming in from Sky. They went out and they spent really good money on a trophy.
But I wasn't a big fan of it when it initially got introduced because it wasn't a big trophy. Maybe I'm overcompensating. I'm all for size, and I like the European Cup in football and what have you. I like a big trophy, and this was a bit. But obviously, the fact that after 96, 97, there was such a long drought, you start to love it because you won it so much, and then to win it after 20 years was fantastic. And I remember, the night we all got to touch it was probably the best night of my life. But yeah, when it was first introduced, I wasn't a huge fan. Just on this point, now that we've got to keep that, and I'm not asking you to name names, you know the other trophies we've got to keep, the Heineken League trophy and the playoff trophy. You know where those are, yeah?
Yes.
They're in safekeeping?
Yes.
Okay. We haven't lost them anywhere.
Every time we bring this up, it's so secret scriddle. It's like just a short, sharp answer. Yes.
Yeah.
I know where they are.
Yeah,
you know where they are.
They're safe.
They're safe,
yeah. But I do also know, I'm not sure, I know half a story. and I'm not sure whether it was Cardiff or I'm not sure whether it was Todd Tellett. Did Belfast ever win Monty? They must have, yeah.
Yes, Theo was there.
I think it was when Belfast won it that it had to go through the security scanner, and when it went through the security scanner, it hit something. It was like maybe on its.
I thought this was when we were taking it out to Belfast the second year we won it.
Maybe
so we took it out to Belfast because Lordo said we have to have the trophy on the ice.
And it got crushed in the scanner, and it basically got folded in half. so they spent the next time like trying to sort of warm it up and prise it apart. And, it's got a few dents in it. I mean,
Craig Moore gave it a few dents on.
He did.
He had it, and fair play to him. He was delighted to have won it. But it
set the record that night for the longest ever in a hockey kit, and he wasn't playing, was he?
No,
he just come back from his ACL, but I think he spent.
John Terry did better than John Terry.
He was at least 6 hours in his hockey kit, and that was from the end of the game onwards.
Yeah, it was
on the start. So.
But it's a shame that it's not around anymore.
What, Monty?
Yeah,
or Superleague.
Monty. Yeah. But it's a nice bookend in that we won it 20 years apart.
Yeah.
And we were the first team and the last team to win it. And I remember the first time we regained it after 20 years, me and you, John, went to the office to get it because we were going to put it on camera. And we walked past the boys playing football. And, I remember I don't think some of the guys had ever seen it before.
It was Patrick Bordlaw.
Yeah. And hey guys, is that the trophy? Yeah. You shitting me? No. That's it. And then guys, come and look at this.
Yeah. Remember Bordlow's line was, "Is that it?"
Yeah.
And I think it was filled with M&Ms, wasn't it? For a long time as well, which was a gift. Maybe even from Belfast, from Brooksy.
I think that was something that Brooksy and Todd did in Belfast when Doug Christensen demanded the conference trophy. He wanted a conference trophy the year they won it. So I think Brooksy and Todd...
They bought the biggest one.
They bought the biggest one they could and filled it with M&Ms.
Yeah.
Brilliant. One serious question before we wrap up. Why didn't the Devils win the league for so long afterwards? Taking away the off-ice stuff that occurred at certain times, there were years where could have, should have. Was there a bit of complacency in the organisation after this Super League win?
For me, and Franny might answer differently, I think it was probably just a bit of financial muscle. We still competed. I think there was a year, the year after we finished second to Ayr, the year after that we possibly finished second to Manchester, so we were still up there competing. But certainly in terms of Manchester, when Kurt Kleinendorf came in, and he was a great coach and has gone on to great things, they had the ability to bring in real top end players. So we never got the new rink, and I think we, based on what Franny said before, speculating to accumulate with Sky money coming in that never did. I think we were probably spending above our means, and I think that just kind of ran out. Let's not forget Heavey won that playoff trophy in '99, beating Manchester and Nottingham. So we, as much as we like to think ourselves as a huge club, and I do think of us as a huge club, we were going up against teams which probably then had bigger budgets, better venues than us. We're getting sponsorship and corporate income. So Super League unfortunately became a bit of an arms race, and that was its downfall. And I don't think we could quite sort of compete with the finances, but I might be wrong, Franny.
No, I think that's nail on the head there. It was the arena team started to, the crowds were up because this new product was way better. And when you've got our 2,600 seater rink going up against people drawing 7,000, 10,000, 12,000, whatever it was in Manchester, they did have the clout, and I think we always punch above our weight, and we always did, but there's only so far that'll take you. When you've got people throwing serious money around, and I think we became a sort of a victim, if you like, of that. That extra spending power that the arena teams had. And
did we finish second that last year we were in it, or third when we started off with McCarthy and Walkington, then McCarthy went and Walkington, and we brought in guys like Kim Al-Roos and Zima, and that was the year John Parker was there and what have you. So that was our last year in Super League before we dropped out. I think Super League did one more year after that. But I think
about 4 teams.
With about 4 teams. But I think we finished either second or third that year. So we were always there or thereabouts, apart from Paul Heavey's last season, where I think we finished 8th and missed the playoffs the year. We had a lot of Swedish players and Doc Durdle and things like that, and that was a sad end for Heavey to go out on. I think a lot of the British players had been curtailed by this time. Stoney had dropped out, Franny had dropped out. That was sad to see.
We probably will never cover that season because
Franny wouldn't remember any about it. Whereas these seasons he
played
it, he remembers everything.
I think I was in the bar though, still on the Labatt's bar and all the rest of it.
Yeah, hooch by this point, sure.
Yeah. That's Hooch is one to ask Jason Stone. He was the Hooch monster, yeah.
Just Stoney is coming on. We asked him.
We booked him.
Yes.
I just gave that away, didn't I?
We did, and he's more reliable than Shannon.
Yeah, we couldn't pin Shannon down, but we've got Stoney committed, so we'll get him on to talk about retired shirts and all that jazz.
Who should I say? This year's Superleague year, he won British Defenceman of the Year. That Alan Weeks trophy that Mark Richardson's won lately and Stephen Cooper won for years. Jason Stone was voted the best British defenceman in the league this year. And
pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah, very good going.
Gentlemen, any closing comments on this first Super League year before we wrap it up? I think we've done a pretty good overview of what went on. Of course, in the archives there is more, especially about the pre-season training camps about this season, which are my highlights of this whole podcast journey. So please go and check those out because it does add quite a little bit to this. But we didn't want to bore our usual listeners by going through it again, but they are exceptional stories. Anything to end on?
I think for me, just this was, and it didn't last, and it couldn't last, and it was sad seeing the British players drop out. But this first year, and of course the Devils won it, so that was great. But this was a really exciting year of hockey. It was the standard did kind of shoot up tenfold, and there were some mistakes, and there were some guys employed just because they had a Canadian accent. But for the most part, a lot of guys came in who were exceptional hockey players, and I remember it being exciting. I remember it being exciting with Sky being involved, and just as Franny touched upon there, I remember the conversations, and I haven't had this conversation with Franny, but I remember having this conversation with my dad, and for me, because the rivalry with Sheffield is so great, it was important to be the team that won it first. Because Sheffield won the last 2 league trophies, they were favourites for this Super League, and it was right. We're Cardiff. We set the standard. It was important that we won it first. So this was a really special league title to win. I didn't think it would be 20 years before we won another one. And I think up until the last 2 or 3 years, this was probably the best season of hockey I'd seen. Probably the best Devils team I'd ever seen. I think that probably has been surpassed now. But 96, 97 will always stand out as a really, really enjoyable year.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it was, growing up, it was always 2-line hockey, and we were the 3rd line, the kid line, and all stuff. Then, this new era came in, and yes, there was the excitement because there was going to be so much more money, and we were going to be, well paid as the Sky money came in, and all those promises. I quickly found out that my sort of 3rd line role was, not going to be the case that year because you mentioned it before. You look at our 3rd line. Probably what won us the league that year, with Vez was 2nd top scorer in the league.
Yep.
Doug McCarthy was top 5 scorer, and then Uchuk, very useful all-round player.
Yep.
That was our 3rd line, which is incredible because then you got the other line of Mo, Duggan, Ian to complement the famous black line of Hodge, Matulak, and Thornton, which was deadly. But we had that 4th line, so it was myself, Swanee, George Swan and Peter Smith, Waffy, and we only sort of spot shifted out there, and it's often talked about now, is the Elite League now better than the Super League was? And Todd will tell you, back in the Super League you had 10 forwards, and that was it. So the depth is way better now. Maybe on an individual basis there may be a slight edge on some of the players that played in the Super League, but in terms of the overall depth, it's the vote is on the Elite League. But we had a 4th line that year, and it was so appreciative that when McCarthy made those comments to say that without you pulling those shifts when guys needed a rest, that we might not have got there. So a very, very satisfying year for me, even though I didn't get the ice time that I obviously aimed for at the start of the year, because I always envisaged myself to be part of the top 9. When you see the calibre of players coming in, the ones I've just mentioned, no chance I fit on that top 9. But still, to play a small part is, something that we'll always remember.
Franny doesn't pump his tyres enough. Just to point out, I think this was Franny's 3rd league title in 5 years. So
yeah, but it does help when you got Mo, Doug, Ian.
Stop selling yourself short, man.
Shannon,
3rd league title in 5 years.
Indeed, and that is why we do these podcasts, because Franny's been such a monumental part of Devils history. That was the Super League year. We will end. Franny, can you remember that question that you were posed in Graz?
It was about an incident on the bench involving Frank Evans. On the bench, yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
do
about.
You do? Okay. So I didn't know about it, but I said I know people will. So we'll talk about it off microphone, and we'll see if we can bring that into another episode.
Okay. Well, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it was a worthy winner of the poll, as would of the first 10th year as well, because we'll have tons on that when we eventually get round to doing that episode. And a bit of a hello to Rich in Dubai, who when we do that first 10th episode, will be an invaluable source of information for me when I do my research, because we went through some stuff that year. But he always gives me a row for not saying hello to him. But hello to Rich.
Hi, Rich.
In sunny.
Do I know Rich?
I think you may have met him once or twice, but maybe not.
Hi, anyway,
yep. But he's in lovely warm Dubai.
Is he still working for Pepsi?
No, he's working for a luxury drinks company.
We can have this conversation off.
I know, I'll edit that little bit out.
You think it's sponsorship?
Yeah,
the podcast?
Rich.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
there we go.
Hello to Rich.
Yeah.
I remember Rich. Always loved spending time with Rich. Over a Budvar.
And we are going to say goodbye from Mr. John Donovan.
Thank you guys for having us again. Goodbye.
No problem. Mr. Neil Francis, of course.
Cheers, JD. I'll address you first, just so you feel important. Thank you, guys.
I'm Gareth Lewis, and this is Brass Bonanza. Good night.